Hello everybody, my name is Sean, and this is the first of my Pathfinder 2 builds that I'm going to be building on this channel here. Just as a quick reminder slash disclaimer, if you haven't seen the mission statement slash trailer video, that is linked in the description below. It is going to be semi-integral to watching this actual build video. If you're unfamiliar with the free archetype variant rule or what I'm setting out to do, the too long didn't watch though is I'm going to be making a build using the free archetype variant rule first elucidated in the Game Mastery Guide and sort of just building it to a theme. This is not meant to be an overpowered character. It is, however, meant to be a fun character that's built to a theme. One more step of disclaimer before we get into it is I have built this character entirely using Path Builder 2 and using resources from Archives of Nethys, so all of the images that are going to be displayed on the screen are from either of those websites. If you'd like to follow along with the build is linked in the description below. It will route you to Path Builder and sort of you'll be able to follow along. Now, for this build in particular, which I've lovingly called Skeletslinger, this came about because one of my friends, a player in my group, was making a gunslinger at the time. We had looked up just randomly on Google gunslinger art, as you do if you can't draw like myself, and this image popped up. And instead of doing the normal thing where I'm like, oh, that's cool, I'll leave it be, I looked at it and I said, oh my God, that has to be a Pathfinder character. And one of the days that I was just sitting around doing nothing, I built it out in Path Builder 2, and this is sort of a result of that. So just understand, this is where sort of these random bits of inspiration come from, is me making characters based on images I've seen, movies that I've watched, so on and so forth. It is all random all the time. So obviously looking at the picture, this guy is of the skeleton ancestry. That's going to give us a few things right off the bat. It's going to set our base hit points for our ancestry to 6. It's going to set our base size to medium, speed to 25 feet. We have dexterity, charisma, and 1 free boost. We also have a ability flaw in intelligence. That's not going to be the worst thing for us. It's going to hit some of our skills, especially those lore skills and intelligence-based skills that we're going to be using. But as a gunslinger, I'm not really looking to make a skill monkey as it is. I'm looking to just have a guy who has a gun and does a lot of damage with that gun. So this is going to work perfectly for what we're looking at. You also get the basic undead benefits found on page 44 of the Book of the Dead. For this instance, being that we're a skeleton, we get low light vision, we get negative healing, and we also get our undead sort of hunger that replaces our need for food and water. In this instance, because we're a skeleton, we need to collect bones to help mend ourselves and so on and so forth. So it could just be an interesting little sack of bones that you're carrying around, or however you wanted to flavor that out is perfectly fine. Secondly, for the background, we're going with the sheriff background. With sheriff, you get 2 ability boosts. One of them has to be dexterity or charisma. Both of those are perfect for us. The other is a free boost. I'm probably, and in fact I did, going to take dexterity and charisma with both of these. Charisma is really going to benefit me as not only a sheriff, but also as a gunslinger because of Wave the Pistol Arrow relying a lot on intimidation or deception checks, but we'll get more into that later. You are trained in intimidation, perfect, and you get the hunting lore skill. You also get the group coercion skill feat. Moving on to our class, very simple. We're going to go with the gunslinger. This is going to put us at 8+ con for hit points. Our key ability score is going to be dexterity. We are experts in perception. Saving throws are fairly decent. Skills are going to be dastardly low. We're looking at 2 basically per level because of our low intelligence modifier, and that's not liable to go up anytime soon. We're trained in light armor, trained in medium armor, trained in unarmored. Probably going to be running light armor, if any, just because of how much dexterity we're going to have innately with this character. It's going to sort of clash with wearing medium or heavier armor. Starting at level 1, with our ability scores, we have them as listed here. We're taking dexterity and charisma from our boosts for our ancestry, as well as the free pick going into constitution. I want to sort of be a beefy guy. If we're looking at a way to flavor this, I'm thinking he's been on the lam for a while. He's sort of that sheriff archetypical example. So he's going to be beefy. He's going to be able to take a hit. For our background boost, we're going, as I said before, dexterity and charisma. Class boost goes into dexterity, obviously. And then for our free boosts, we're going constitution, wisdom, dexterity, and charisma. This gives us dexterity to a +4 immediately, charisma to a +3. Both of those are excellent. I'm taking wisdom because of perception. I want to have a higher perception than I do want to negate my skill deficit that I'm going to be at for my low intelligence. And then obviously, like I said, constitution for that beefiness, giving me that early +2. Skill training immediately. This is going to be very, very, very easy. So we're going to take diplomacy and nature. You could swap out nature if you wished for survival. I could see either or being useful, or if you were really, really needing it, you could go with stealth. I figured this character wasn't really going to be sneaking around a whole lot, more of the I'll duel you at high noon sort rather than the I'll skulk about in the background sort, but that's going to end up being up to you. I also forewent going with acrobatics because acrobatics, more or less not going to be very useful, despite the fact that I'll have such a ridiculously high score in it. Because we've chosen the way of the pistolero, we can choose between either deception or intimidation. Well, we already have intimidation trained because of our sheriff background. So I'm going to go ahead and take deception to negate some of the skill deficit we're going to be at. Honestly, though, we're not going to be doing a whole lot of deception. I'm envisioning this character being a very straightforward, very I'll shoot you in the face rather than in the back sort of situation. For our heritage, now this is obviously open to debate. You could take some of the skeleton heritages, such as the slightly faster movement speed or slightly burlier skeleton or the unarmed attacks. All of those are going to be decent. I ended up going with Aphorite, one of the uncommon versatile heritages. Now, the reasons I did this are varied. Firstly, the later game skeleton feats, so skeleton feat 13 and 17, really not going to be great for what I'm looking to do. I don't want to turn into a bone tornado as a gunslinger. It's just going to do less damage. It's going to expose me to more damage, and it doesn't really fit the theme. Like sheriff comes into town, turns into a bone tornado. It doesn't make any sense. So we needed a different source to draw from for some of our feats. What's more, Aphorite fits perfectly from the plane of law. So you're already a literal law man. You upgrade your low light vision to dark vision, which is always helpful. And like I said, you can gain those Aphorite feats as we level up. We're going to be taking quite a few of those, spoiler alert. After we select that heritage, we have the ancestry feat internal cohesion from the Aphorite heritage. This is going to let people who are doing treat wounds on us, we'll get to that in a second, not need a healer's tools, and if they critically fail once per day, you can increase that to just a failure so you're not taking damage from that. Now, because you're a skeleton, people doing medicine checks on you are going to have the stitch flesh feat in order to do anything to you that isn't negative, right? However, this does subvert the need for healer's tools if they were inaccessible or what have you. We are also going to take the class feat hit the dirt. If a foe makes a strike against you, you can sort of try to leap out of the way. You get a +2 circumstance bonus to your AC against the triggering attack, but you land prone after completing your leap. So give and take. So we're going to gain a couple other things, class features and ancestry features that I haven't gone over yet, such as 10 paces, which is our initial deed for our way of pistolero. This is basically you get a +2 to your initiative, and while you're rolling that initiative, you can step up to 10 feet. Being that this is a step, you are going to avoid attacks of opportunity. You're going to avoid all sorts of other stuff. So it could be immensely helpful to get you into position. That's going to be great for you. You are immune to death effects. This does not mean, as the name would suggest, that you are immune to dying. You are simply immune to effects like wraith attacks, for example, have the death trait. So if they reduce you to 0 hit points and you are a living character or otherwise not immune to the death effect trait, you would instantly die. You would not have those saves and then recover and be wounded. You would just instantly expire. You are immune to those as a skeleton and as most undead creatures. We are also going to gain dark vision, as stated above, because of our Aphorite stacking on top of our skeleton. Because of our basic undead benefits, we are going to gain disease and poison protection. That's going to give us a +1 to those saving throws. We are also going to gain from our gunslinger way of the pistolero, the raconteur's reload. Sorry if I've mispronounced that. It's a weird word. Which basically lets us use an action to reload and at the same time try to demoralize or create a diversion. This is just that's just free action economy, right? You're going to have to reload your guns using this character. So while you're doing that, you're also doing an intimidate. You're also doing a create a diversion. That's just great. Couple more things. We also have the singular expertise, which is going to give us a +1 circumstance bonus to damage rolls when using firearms and crossbows. This basically says that you can't use other weapons. They're not going to scale as high as your firearms and crossbows because that's going to be your focus, right? So you're not going to be able to use, say, a javelin quite so well, even though you're not technically bad at using javelins, but if that makes sense. Lastly, we're going to get the group coercion feat from our sheriff background, which lets us coerce using intimidation up to 5 people rather than just 1 in a sort of exploration mode activity. I figure this is sort of like rallying up the posse, running a guy out of town, whatever you want to call it. Starting at 2nd level, we're going to grab the warning shot class feat. Now, this doesn't necessarily need to be part of the build. I just thought it was cool. I thought it was fun. Thought it fit the theme. Instead of trying to demoralize a foe using a glance or a glare or words, you're going to instead fire a gun into the air. Obviously, guns speak louder than words, and you're not going to need to speak or share the same language as the creature. You don't receive that penalty that you would normally receive trying to demoralize someone that doesn't share the same language as you, similar to how intimidating glare works, except in this instance, you're firing a gun into the air. This does require a loaded firearm rather than a loaded crossbow, because obviously you fire a crossbow into the air, it just makes a slight and then flies away. Really not that intimidating. With our free archetype variant rule, though, we are going to grab the martial dedication. Martial dedication is going to be so integral to what we're going to be doing with this character. It includes all of our favorite things, being sort of the beefy, sort of inspiring support character that's dealing out all this damage. We're going to be using diplomacy and intimidation a lot to sort of buff our allies and debuff our enemies. So yeah, it's just going to be immensely helpful. The way that this is flavored in the game is you've combined your social skills and your combat training to become a talented combat leader. Choose diplomacy or intimidation. We went with intimidation. You become trained in that skill or become an expert if you were already trained in it. Great. Free skill training. We desperately need that. In addition, you're surrounded by a marshal's aura, 10-foot emanation. Your aura has the emotion, mental, and visual traits and grants you and your allies a +1 status bonus to saving throws against fear. Right off the bat, not immensely helpful, right? If you just took the dedication, Marshal's going to be kind of weak. It's just that +1. It's a free skill training, when in this instance we desperately needed, and that's going to be about it. For our skill feat at this level, you get a skill feat every even level as a gunslinger. We're going to take Intimidating Glare. Now, obviously, there is some room for adjustment here. You could go with one of the other myriad skill traits, something that fits your campaign closer. I went with Intimidating Glare, even though it overlaps quite a bit with Warning Shot, because there's going to be some instances where you want to demoralize and you're not necessarily looking to fire a loaded gun into the air, right? Say you're sneaking up and you want to demoralize a guard without alerting the entire camp to your presence. You're not going to want to fire a gun in that instance. So Intimidating Glare is going to work for that. It loses the auditory trait, and you again don't take that penalty for a creature not understanding the language you're using. Moving on to level 3, because our intimidation is already scaling up, I'm going to go ahead and put my skill training into nature. This is going to bump us up to expert. Again, you could be taking survival, you could be taking stealth, you could be taking acrobatics here. So I would say whatever your nature slot is, for lack of a better word, bump that one up here. What's more, we're going to take the ride feat, because it doesn't even make sense for a sheriff not to have a trusty steed to sort of carry them from town to town. It doesn't necessarily have to be something to the order of like the cavalier steed or one of the trained animal companions, just not having to make those constant nature checks to lead these animals along. This also feeds into why I'm buffing nature. So in the event that I'm getting a new steed, that I found a fast horse on the run from something, or an ostrich mount that I wanted to take, that nature is going to help me tame them. It's going to help me get them into my thrall, for lack of a better word, and let me ride them in the future using this feat. Also at level 3, we're going to pick up Stubborn, which is going to increase our will saves to expert. And if you fail, but not critically fail, on a check that is going to give you a condition that has any length of time, you can attempt another check at the start of your turn to sort of get rid of that, rather than the typical at the end of your turn, or if the save was going to be allowed at all. So it's just basically a little bit of a buff on your will saves. Probably the least used save in my experience, but it still could come in handy. Starting at level 4, we're going to take the class feat Quick Draw. Now, I think this is integral. It is you draw your weapon and fire with that same action. Again, we're just going in hard on action economy. We're just able to draw that weapon, fire it. If we need to reload it, we can draw that weapon, fire it, reload it, and do an intimidation check. That's all just 2 actions because of the action economy that we're sort of stacking one after the other. Using our free archetype, we're going to take Dread Martial stance, and this is probably the strongest part of taking Martial as the dedication. The flavor goes, putting on a grim face for the battle ahead, you encourage your allies to strike up fear in your foes with vicious attacks. When you use this action, attempt an intimidation check. We're really good at those. The DC is usually a standard difficulty DC for your level, but the GM can assign different DCs based on the circumstance. The effect depends on the results of your check. Those results are as follows. Critical success. Your martial aura increases to 20-foot emanation, and it grants you and your allies a status bonus to damage rolls equal to the number of weapon dice of the unarmed attack or weapon that you are wielding that has the most weapon damage dice. So in this instance, right, if somebody is a dual-wielding fighter, he's got in one hand a dagger, he's got in the other hand a +1 striking longsword, right? So even if he's attacking with the dagger, because he's wielding the longsword that's +1 striking, it's still going to be that +2 status bonus to damage. What's more, you're going to be able to stack this on top of your singular expertise, right? Your singular expertise is giving you a +1 circumstance bonus to your damage rolls using firearms and crossbows. Now this is giving you a +1 at the start, +2 once you get that striking rune, so on and so forth as you add on more damage dice. Status bonus, which is going to stack on top of that. Just free damage is free damage. As a success, you still get all that bonus to your damage, but the aura doesn't increase in size. Failure, you fail to enter the stance. Critical failure, you fail to enter the stance and can't take this action again for 1 minute. Now, this is sort of high risk, high reward, but because we're stacking intimidation at all costs, we're not going to be failing this over much, right? We're going to be succeeding those more often than not. We're going to be going into that instantly at the beginning of combat. If you think about it, if you're adding just +2 damage to each successful strike, in the course of a 5 to 6 round encounter, you're looking at double digits easily damage added just from this one action that you're taking one time at the beginning of combat. So it's going to be really stacking up. Lastly, for our skill feat at level 4, we're going to be taking Tame Animal. This just sort of further goes into that, oh, I found my perfect horse while I was wandering through the wilderness. I found my ostrich mount that was waiting for me. We killed all these bandits and I need to tame one of their horses so that we can easily escape back to town. Whatever it may be, Tame Animal's just going to come in clutch. All of these skill feats, I should say right here, are going to be sort of negotiable, right? There's going to be instances where you are going to take a different one because your campaign calls for different skill feats, but just this is the theme that I've chosen. These are by all means negotiable. At level 5, we get our first ability increase and another skill increase. With this skill increase, I'm going to bring Diplomacy up to Expert. That could flex over to Deception if I wanted it to. I figured this guy's more diplomatic than he is deceptive. That's again open to interpretation. For the ability boosts, we're going to be taking basically the same 4 as we did at the start. Con, Wisdom, Dex, and Charisma. This is going to bring your Charisma up to +4, make those intimidation checks and those deception checks and diplomacy checks easier, make Dread Martial stance easier, so on. You're going to get better Con, better Dex, so on and so forth. This is just a really good level for us as gunslingers. We also get an Ancestry feat at this time. We're going to be taking one of the Ancestry feats from the Aphorite called Offensive Analysis. You can enhance your senses and mental state to consider every aspect of an attack. You cast True Strike, which is now called Sure Strike in the remastered rules, as a divine innate spell once per day. So basically, this is just going to let us pop off Sure Strike, put it on ourselves, roll twice, and take the better result on one of our attacks, basically once per day. But even still, if we're fighting a big bad, we're fighting an enemy that has to die this round, Gunslinger already has a unique capacity of this amazingly scaling base attack bonus. It's similar to fighters in that you are just getting expertise, mastery, and legend so much faster than other classes with crossbows and with firearms that you are going to be hitting very consistently. With this, if you don't crit on this attack, it's sort of going to be rare, right? Rolling twice with your highest base attack, your first multiple attack, and taking the higher result is just going to net you a crit. Also at this level, we get Gunslinger Weapon Mastery, which is going to increase our proficiency rank in all of our martial firearms, simple firearms, and crossbows to master, and our rank in advanced weapons, advanced ranged weapons, advanced crossbows, advanced firearms to expert. It's also going to give us our critical specialization effect for all of those. This is just all around one of the best levels to be a gunslinger. If you think about it, during this same time, other characters, say a wizard using cantrips, a sorcerer using cantrips, they're lucky to be experts anytime soon, anytime around this area when you're gaining mastery in your weapon. So if there was any doubt up until now what your goal, what your role in the party was, you are just there to just put foes down. That's it. Starting at level 6, we're going to grab for our class feat Pistoleros Challenge. This is another one action activity. With a stern call or carefully chosen barb or some other challenging declaration, you demand your foe's attention in a duel. Choose an opponent within 30 feet that you can perceive and can hear you. Make the choice of a deception or intimidation check. We're going to go with intimidation against their will DC. No matter the result of the check, the foe is temporarily immune to Pistoleros Challenge until noon the next day. How thematic. On a success, both you and your opponent gain +2 status bonus to damage rolls with strikes made against each other. If you're a master in the skill you've chosen for this check, the status bonus is increased to +3, and if you're a legend, it goes up to +4. Now at level 6, we have something of a choice available to us. I ended up going with, in my build, Pistoleros Challenge, as it sort of fits the theme of what I'm looking to do. You're dueling people at high noon. You're going to issue challenges to people. You get +2 status bonus to hit that or to do damage to them, and they get the same for you. However, this is also going to overlap with our earlier choice of Dread Martial Stance. If I go into Dread Martial Stance first and then do a Pistoleros Challenge, I'm really not getting any benefit. In fact, I only stand to lose things. I'm giving them an ability to hit me harder. So there is some room here. If you're using a bizarre weapon, an advanced weapon, you can take the advanced shooter feat. In fact, that's sort of non-negotiable if you're not just using one of the basic ones. This is going to have you treat all of those advanced ones as martial weapons for the purposes of determining your proficiency. So, right, it's going to go up to the master and legend much faster than it otherwise would. The other option is Cauterize. In the event that one of your allies or even you as a skeleton somehow are bleeding, Cauterize is going to let you roll to basically press the hot barrel of your gun against their wound to stop their bleeding. All of these are obviously options. I ended up, like I said, going with Pistoleros Challenge, but that was more of a thematic choice. I could see either of the other two being better for you in almost every way. Next, for our free archetype, we're going to take Cadence Call. It is a one-action activity from the Martial Dedication. You call out a quick cadence, guiding your allies into a more efficient rhythm. Each ally within your martial aura is quickened until the end of their next turn. They can use this extra action to stride. At the end of each ally's turn, if they used that extra action, they then become slowed 1 until the end of their following turn. Now, this is sort of one of those high risk, high rewards, right? If you desperately need 4 actions in one turn, this is going to be great. This is the Loose Times Arrow spell, 1 action cheaper with some sort of drawbacks, right? So you can, if you need to, sort of call this out, let people make that choice. If they want to take the action hit on their next turn and put it on this turn, that's going to be there for them. Otherwise, they don't have to use it. It's going to be perfect. Moving on, our skilled feat at this level is going to be Bonded Animal. You'll notice a theme. We're going hard into animal taming, animal bonding. I sort of envision this character having a mount of some sort that is their sort of best friend, only friend, whatever you want to call it. You see this in a lot of archetypical Westerns where the character is sort of more bonded to their horse than to their actual human compatriots. That's sort of where I'm going with this here. Bonded Animal isn't going to help you over much. It's going to let you spend 7 days of downtime in order to make the animal helpful to you. You make it nature check against the animal's will DC. If successful, you bond the animal. The animal becomes permanently bonded to you unless you do this again with a different animal, which, I mean, cheating on your animal, how dare you? A helpful animal is easier to direct, as described on page 242 of the core rulebook. I don't know yet what page that's on in the remaster. It might be that this is already converted over. Don't quote me on that. If your bonded animal is like at level -1, it gains the minion trait. So basically you can just direct it as though it were a minion. You no longer have to make those checks. You already weren't with your ride, but if you weren't riding the animal, say, and your horse is off a short ways, you can now give those commands to the animal to run over to get you, get on it without making a nature check at that range and potentially failing and maybe having repercussions for that. So this is just going to make that easier. Again, not integral to the build. I just thought it was a very fun thematic choice. Moving on to level 7, we are going to increase intimidation to master. Intimidation, as I've stated a couple times now, integral to the build. You have to have this as high as possible. So we're going to be bumping that up here. For our general feat, we're going to grab Fleet. Fleet is in almost every build I've ever made. Fleet increases your speed by 5 feet. The end. It's not a circumstance bonus. It's not a status bonus. It is just a flat increase to your speed. It's going to stack with all of your other stuff. It is absolutely perfect. Absolutely great to have in any general feat. We also at this level, because of the class, grab Vigilant Senses, which is going to increase our perception to master. And we grab Weapon Specialization, which is just going to stack on a little bit more damage to weapons and unarmed attacks, with which we are at least an expert. Hopefully we're using weapons at this point where we're masters, but in the event that we're not, it's still going to increase it. At level 8, for our class feat, we're going to take Leap and Fire. Now, this is going to build off of the fact that we already have Hit the Dirt from level 1. The flavor goes, you're quick enough to line up shot even while diving to the ground. When you use Hit the Dirt reaction at any point throughout your leap, you can also make a range strike with a loaded firearm or crossbow, targeting the creature whose attack triggered the reaction. Now, this is just great, right? Say it is the last creature's turn before your turn. You haven't used it. You've had no reason to use it. No one's come close to breaking your AC. The target targets you. You use Hit the Dirt just to fire at them at first map. That is a perfectly valid use of this. It adds so much value to Hit the Dirt because now you're making that first map attack while diving. It doesn't matter if the attack still hits you. It doesn't matter if you completely dodge the attack. You're just getting a free attack effectively. So Leap and Fire, in my opinion, is completely necessary at this level. Moving on, we're going to change dedications for the first time, as we've already selected our 2 requisite feats for the martial dedication at levels 4 and 6. We are going to grab the Soul Forger dedication. Effectively, what the Soul Forger dedication is it makes a soul bond, soul animate, soul magic weapon / armor / shield that you can use and manifest using your Soul Forger stuff. So effectively, the most archetypical example of this would be like a paladin soul forging their armor so that it sort of coalesces around them when they're ready for battle, or so on and so forth. In this instance, we are going to take a soul forged, I'm thinking like a soul forged poncho or a soul forged some sort of light armor with the deep-seated fear manifestation power. Now what this does is it gives you a +2 status bonus to intimidation checks, and you don't take penalties for not sharing a language when you demoralize foes. Obviously, we have quite a few ways to do that, but what we were mainly looking for is that +2 status bonus to intimidation. Now, effectively how this is going to work is you can manifest your soul forged armament. Upon manifesting it, you can choose to activate its power, right? In this instance, I would manifest my soul forged poncho that I'd be wearing. I'd choose to activate its power, which would give me 1 minute of +2 intimidation checks. If I did this at the start of combat, for example, just before combat, I activate that, I'm getting a +2 status bonus to all of those checks for Dread Martial Stance, for my demoralizes when I'm reloading. For any other time that I'm trying to demoralize, that is just free reduction in enemy AC. It's free reduction in enemy skill checks and attack rolls. I can't overstate it enough. This is going to come in clutch for us. What's more, because it's a status bonus, status bonuses are very rare to get, especially on skills, especially on useful combat skills, I should say. It's very easy to get an item bonus to intimidation. It's very easy to get a circumstance bonus to intimidation, but getting these status bonuses, and especially a +2 status bonus, is going to make some of those dread martial checks just trivial. For our skill feat at this level, we are going to take Battle Cry, which requires Master in Intimidation. When you roll initiative, you yell a mighty battle cry and demoralize an observed foe as a free action. If you're legendary in intimidation, you can use the reaction to demoralize your foe when you critically succeed in an attack roll. That's not going to come until later, but we are going to get to that. Now, something to note here. Rules-wise, I cannot use 2 free actions that use the same stimulus. So in this instance, rolling initiative, right? I roll initiative and I can battle cry, or I can use 10 paces. This doesn't mean we just get to stack infinite free actions on that. You roll initiative and basically you take 15 turns and then your allies get to go. No, you get to choose one or the other. This is if you're already in the spot that you'd like to be in, you can go ahead and pop battle cry, intimidate some people immediately, roll with that, or you can choose to do 10 paces, the thing we got at level 1 from Way of the Pistolero, and sort of run to the location we'd like to be in. It's going to give you those options at time of initiative. At level 9, we are going to be boosting nature up to master. This is again for all those animal checks, the bonded animal, the ride, so on. For our ancestry feat, we are going to be taking skeletal resistance. This is sort of a theme pick. Your body becomes resistant, your hardened bones, deflecting weapons and other forms of damage. You gain resistance 2 to cold, electricity, fire, piercing, and slashing damage. The main reason behind this was the picture had 2 arrows piercing the creature. I thought it'd be fun to have that sort of thematically borne out in some way, and that's skeletal resistance in a nutshell. There are other options that you could take at this level, such as analyze information from the Aphoroid, which gives you a single casting of hypercognition once per day. But I didn't think that really fit, especially because our intelligence is so low. We're not going to get a lot of benefit out of hypercognition. We are also going to get our advanced deed at this point. That's going to give us Pistolero's Retort. Now, this is sort of going to stack on top of our hit the dirt, leap, and fire combo that we had going on. But effectively, if somebody is aiming at you and they critically fail on an attack, you can use your reaction to attack them back. This is in the event that you sort of the start of the turn order just after you've gone. So you've got quite a while until your reaction resets. In this instance, you don't necessarily want to dive on the ground and make yourself easier to hit for the rest of initiative order. But if the enemy that's firing at you fires on their third map and gets a critical miss, you can fire back. It's making enemies afraid of you even when it's not your turn, sort of making the DM not want to use that third map, fish for a crit. Now you have the capacity to fire back with that reaction. We also gain Gunslinger's Expertise, which increases our Gunslinger class DC to Expert. We're not going to be using that a whole lot, but it's still nice to have. Moving on, we get our second ability boost at level 10. This is going to be a very familiar ability boost. It's going to be Constitution, Wisdom, Dexterity, and Charisma. This is going to bring our Dexterity up to +5, as it is our second one since character creation. So that's just going to be a +1 to all of our hit rolls, all of our Dexterity, skill checks, basically everything. This is a big level for us. For our class feat, now this is one of the first times that I'll be doing this. It certainly isn't the last. We're going to take an archetype feat as a class feat. Now, with the free archetype variant rule, it gives you a free class feat that you can spend on archetype feats, right? However, there's no restriction that says you can't also spend your class feat on an archetype feat. So there's going to be some instances where right now at level 10, where the Gunslinger feats don't really call to me. They don't really fit my theme. They don't really continue anything I'm doing. So I'm going to double up on archetype feats. In this instance, I'm going to take Soul Arsenal, which is going to give me another Soul Forged armament. In this instance, I'm thinking like a pistol or a 6-shooter or something like that with the Harmful Malice manifestation power. What this does is it adds the necromancy and negative traits to your weapon, and your strikes deal an additional 1d4 negative damage. Once the armament is manifested, you can cast Harm as an innate spell with a level equal to half yours rounded up. So basically you just get a free heal because you're an undead creature. You can cast Harm on yourself to heal yourself, and you're just going to add 1d4 damage to your weapon. You're already consistently hitting. This is just a really great addition to the build. With our free archetype feat, we're going to grab Rapid Manifestation. Now, Again, this is our third thing that's going to use the same trigger for these free actions. Now, the trigger for this is you roll initiative or a hazard attacks you. You can use a free action to manifest your soul forged armament. So this is, if I roll initiative, I can use a free action. I'm already in the spot I want. I don't want to demoralize anybody right yet. I use a free action to manifest my poncho, which gives me my +2 status bonus to intimidation checks. So I basically just have that ready to go for when I enter Dread Martial stance in the next turn. There is an argument to be made here that you do not want to take this many things with the same trigger. You don't want to stack those things. I think that having those options is going to give you a lot more versatility in the various situations you're going to find yourself in. Maybe in this instance, you desperately need to manifest your gun. Maybe you need to do your demoralization. Maybe you need to take a 10-foot step. Whatever it may be, you have those options. Lastly, for a skill feat, we're going to be taking the Terrified Retreat skill feat, which is Master in Intimidation as a prerequisite. When you critically succeeded a demoralize action, if the target's level is lower than yours, the target is fleeing for 1 round. This is huge. This is a hard CC on any creature in your area that is lower level than you. Let's play this out. There's a whole bunch of little fellas. Maybe they're all magic users, and the big bad is a dragon. I reload, demoralize one of those little guys, critically succeed. He's running away. He loses an entire round of actions unless something sort of extrinsic to you acts on that and stops him from fleeing. That's just going to be huge. There's no downside to this at all. At level 11, we're going to bump it up to Diplomacy at Master. With our general feat, we are going to grab a home in every port, which requires charisma of at least 16 or +3. And basically, this is just going to be when you arrive in a town, your reputation, your positive reputation precedes you. You can locate lodgings easier, you can locate allies easier, so on and so forth. It's sort of just a fluff pick, but it does make that fluff easier. Lastly, at level 11, we grab Evasion. Evasion is one of the strongest things in the game. Your proficiency in reflex saves increases to Master. When you roll a success on a reflex save, you get a critical success instead. Because we're stacking dexterity as a gunslinger, our reflex saves are always going to be our strongest ones. When you roll a success, you roll a critical success. So on all of those basic reflex saves, fireball, breath weapon from a dragon, so on and so forth, you are taking no damage on a success or a critical success. It's basically going to double your survivability against those types of effects. At level 12 for our class feat selection, we're going to be taking Deadeye, which effectively lets us see invisible creatures. It changes invisible creatures down from invisible to concealed. So instead of a DC 11 hidden check and finding them and so on, it's just that DC 5 flat check to hit a concealed target. Much easier. For our free archetype, because we doubled up on our last one, we already have our 2 choices out of the way for Soul Forger. We're going to be taking the Detective dedication. Detective, again, one of those fluff picks. At this point, level 12 and onward, the free archetypes are still good to have, but there's nothing that is going to be sort of build defining in Detective that we're going to be using. This could be easily substituted with, say, Archaeologist or Eldritch Researcher or so on and so forth, just sort of anything that gives you that, for lack of a better term, more skills that you can use out of combat. In this instance, you can use Perception instead of Survival to track. Our survival is trash because of the choices that I've made, so using Perception to track is going to be so big. You also get the Enhanced Tracker skill feat, and you become trained in Society or Thievery. I chose Society as I don't think that Thievery really fits this build, but I could see either one working. For our skill feat at this level, we are going to grab Too Angry to Die, which requires Master in Intimidation. The trigger is you stand up from prone after waking up from being unconscious. You refuse to yield in battle even after you've been knocked off your feet and nearly killed. For you, such a brush with death is less something to fear and more a thing to be infuriated by. As you stand up, you roar in defiance and can attempt to demoralize a foe. So this is just, you're coming back into a fight that you've been knocked out of. You can get that demoralizing. This is going to stack on top of the Terrified Retreat. So if you critically succeed and they are lower level than you, they're going to be fleeing away from you. This might get you out of dodge, as it were, pun intended, for standing up in range of something that could potentially hurt you on the next turn. Lastly, we get that free feat, as I was talking about, the Experience Tracker feat. You can track at full speed by taking a -5 penalty to your survival, or in our case, a perception check. For level 13, we're going to get our regularly scheduled skill increase. We're going to put that in stealth. This is where our character has begun to sort of have more skills than he knows what to do with. I know, crazy, our one every other level is finally adding up. I don't necessarily want to increase deception in this instance, so I figure stealth for those occasional times when you're ambushing a foe or whatever, you'll have that stealth for initiative. We are also, for our ancestry feat, going to grab Impose Order. Now, there's a couple things here. I could see doubling back in this instance and grabbing Rejuvenation Token. Let's say that you're loving playing this character, you don't want to die, and if you do die, you're going to be so mad because you're going to have to roll a new character. You could double back and take Rejuvenation Token as a skeleton feat, which lets you, it's sort of like Ghetto Lich, right? You have a token that takes bits of your soul. If you die, you come back at that token. You have to recharge the token for a week, but basically it gives you a get out of death free card occasionally. At this point though, resurrection magic isn't terribly inaccessible at this level range. So I went with Impose Order, which is another reaction. Frequency, you can only use this once per day. However, the trigger is you critically fail on a skill check or suffer an effect of a misfortune trait. You shift the underlying fabric of reality to impose a baseline of order. If the trigger was a skills check, you instead receive a result of 10 plus your proficiency bonus. If the trigger was an effect with the misfortune trait, the misfortune and fortune effects cancel each other out as normal, negating the triggering misfortune effect. So this is just if somebody casts something on you that stops you from hitting them, right, with a misfortune effect where you roll twice and take the lower result, or you critically fail your skill check, you just basically get to say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to critically fail at my medicine check here or my nature check here or what have you. We also gain medium armor expertise. This is going to increase our proficiency rank in light armor, medium armor, and unarmored defense to expert. We also gain Gunslinger Legend. Now this is absolutely insane to have a level 13 legendary and weapon. Fighter gets this. It's basically just these two that are tied for this level 13 to legend. You are going to get that early +2 from being a legend, past master, and just consistently hit from this point forward. It's just all good things at level 13. Moving on, we have the Come At Me feat for our class feat at level 14. Honestly, I would consider this one to be sort of a fluff pick. You can take any of the earlier feats and probably end up doing better with them. This one was just like I just want to scream come at me when I'm playing this character and just deal with the consequences of that. If you're being smart about this, if you need this character to be powerful, I would go with literally any other choice though. For our free archetype at this level, we are going to grab Tactical Cadence. Now, Cadence Call was the martial feat we picked up a while back that gave us the ability to give allies a bonus action on their turn, a quickened action on their turn for striding. This one basically just removes that slowed one. So this just turns Cadence Call into Loose Times Arrow, but better. Now there's literally no reason to not do Cadence Call all the damn time. There's no detriment. They may as well just stride, even if they're just going to stand still, to just undulate back and forth. There's no downside to using it. Lastly, we get our skill feat, Terrifying Resistance. This is the expert in intimidation. The spells of those you have demoralized are less effective on you. You have succeeded at demoralizing a creature. For the next 24 hours, you gain a +1 circumstance bonus to saving throws against that creature's spells. Just +1 bonus to your saves if you've successfully demoralized them. And that's just one time, right? If I demoralize a creature, they eventually, that frightened wears off. I'm still immune for 24 hours, or immune. I get a +1 to those creatures' spells for 24 hours thereafter. It's just great. Moving on to level 15, we have our skill increase. We're going to dump that into intimidation as fast as possible, bringing that up to a +28 at this level. That's legendary intimidation. We desperately need that. We also at level 15 get our ability boosts. You'll never guess which 4 skills or which 4 abilities we're going to put them in. We're going to put them in Constitution, Wisdom, Dexterity, and Charisma. We're just getting better at the things that we already have. We have no interest in going into Intelligence. It's not going to help us. We're done. We're done with Intelligence, right? We're also, after this, going to be done with a few other things, but we'll get to that when we get to 20. We're also at this level going to grab the Die Hard feat from our general feats. Now, there is obviously a case to be made here for taking toughness instead, right? Toughness, basically, your body can withstand more punishment, increase your maximum hit points by your level. That's just good for staying up. I went with Die Hard. I felt like Die Hard was a little bit better for what I was going to be doing with it. That's going to be up to dealer's choice, though. Moving on, we have our Gunslinger Greater Deed at this level. That's going to give us the ability Grim Swagger. It's a 2-action activity, which allows us to, everything within 30 feet, make a deception or intimidation check against their will DC. And on a critical success, they are frightened 3 and fleeing for 1 round if they're lower level than you. If it's just a success, they're just frightened 2. I say just as though that's not insane. This is basically, you walk into the saloon, you say, y'all better leave. Roll your intimidation. Everything around you is either fleeing, running out the door to get away from you as fast as possible, or at least frightened of you. Moving on to level 16, we are going to grab the Fatal Bullet Gunslinger class feat. This is basically when you're using a fatal weapon, which is practically every firearm, you get an extra die whenever you critically strike an enemy, right? If you critically hit an enemy and you have fatal D10, for example, you're just going to get an extra D10. Moving on for our free archetype feat, we're going to take the Target of Opportunity reaction. This is a martial feat. The requirements are you have a ranged weapon. Hello, I do. And the trigger is an ally succeeds at a ranged strike against an opponent within your first range increment. You capitalize on your ally's attack and create a coordinated barrage. Make a ranged strike with a -2 against the opponent targeted by the triggering attack. This strike doesn't count towards your multi-attack penalty, and your multiple attack penalty doesn't apply to this strike. Right, it is a reaction. I don't know why they've added that to this. If the strike is successful, combine the damage from the attack with the damage from your ally's attack for the purposes of resistances and weaknesses. This could be really good if you're fighting an enemy that is sort of resistant to, let's say we're fighting a ghost. We don't have ghost touch on our gun, which you can now add because of the remastered rules. But if your ally has already fired their bow, your ranger ally fires their bow at a creature, they do 15 damage. The ghost has, in this hypothetical, has resistance 15 to physical damage. You take a shot, all of your damage is now going to go through as though the creature didn't have any resistances. This is just going to give you another option to attack when it's not your turn. This is obviously debatable, right? If all of your allies are melee attackers, if you're in a party of monks, you're never going to be able to use this. So you could take another feat. There's almost always somebody doing a ranged strike though. Buyer beware though. Lastly, our skill feat at level 16, we're going to take Scare to Death. Legendary and Intimidation, 1-action activity. You frighten foes so much, they might die. Attempt an intimidation check against the will DC of a living creature within 30 feet. This is basically the same as if you were demoralizing. However, where this is different is Scare to Death requires you to actually share the language to not take the -4 penalty. You might think that this shares, right? This shares Intimidating Glare or Warning Shot or all the other bonuses that you have. It does not, because this is a different action. You're not technically demoralizing. You are scaring to death. So you're going to try that. The creature is temporarily immune for 1 minute, regardless of the success. Critical success, the target must attempt a Fortitude save against your Intimidation DC. So that'll be 10 plus your Intimidation, your score in Intimidation. On a critical failure, it dies. On any other result, it is frightened 2 and fleeing for 1 round. Critical failure effect has the death trait, right? Success, frightened 2. Failure, the target still becomes frightened 1. So this is why you would want to use Scare to Death over Demoralize, because even if you fail, they are still frightened 1. You're still frightening enough that they're even scared of you if you fail to intimidate them. Moving on to level 17, we're going to dump our skill increase into Nature, following our same scheme as usual. We are also going to grab the Ancestry feat, Channel the God Mind. Sounds really powerful. It is pretty powerful. It is a 2-action activity, frequency once per day. You tap into the God Mind's collective cognitive well, rapidly parsing near infinite variables to read your surroundings. For 1 minute, you gain precise motion sense out to 60 feet. You can see invisible creatures and objects, and you gain the effects of the 9th level True Seeing spell. So the True Seeing spell effectively gives you a check that the GM rolls, which would discern what the creature in front of you is. So in the event that, let's say, a devil is disguised in front of you as a normal person using illusory magic, the GM's going to make that secret check, might tell you, hey, the guy in front of you, he's not what he looks like. Your god mind has told you as much. So this is just a really fun sort of capstone feat. As I said at the onset, there's really nothing from Skeleton that I'm excited for here. Necromantic Air, not really going to be great. I mean, it's good to have the harm spell to be able to heal yourself, but you already have harm from your Soul Forged Armament. Also, there's Bone Swarm. I don't want to turn into a Bone Swarm, so the option was always going to be Channel the Godmind for me. We also gain Juggernaut, which is when you roll a success on Fortitude save, you get a critical success instead. And it increases your proficiency rank to Master. This is effectively evasion, but for Fortitude saves. Gunslinger is just basically immune to things that require saves, unless it's a will save, God forbid. Lastly, you're going to get Shooter's Edge. This is sort of another insane one. You can attack at your weapon's second or third range increment without any penalty. So if your weapon has, let's say, a 30-foot range, you can attack up to 90 feet without any penalty. It's absolutely insane. It also increases your class DC to Master. As I said, though, we're not really using the class DC for anything. For our level 18 class feat, we're going to be taking Piercing Critical, which is effectively whenever you hit a 19 or a 20 on your die, it's going to critically succeed. Now, what that means isn't that you critically succeed all the time on a 19. The way critical successes are treated in Pathfinder is you have to exceed the target's AC by 10, or B, you have to roll a 20 and exceed its AC, right? So in the event that you roll a 20, you let's say your result is 38, the target has a 39 AC, you are just going to get a success. It just increases it by 1 degree. That's not really going to come up if you're firing at something at level 18 as a gunslinger and you roll a 19 and you haven't somehow broken that thing's armor class. Run for your own life. Run. But so for the most part, on a 19 on the die, you are going to critically succeed. This is just going to increase our guaranteed crit rate from just 5% on the die to 10%. Just a straight increase. There's other options at this level. I just thought this one was most thematic for like that Deadeye Pistolero type. We're also, for our free archetype feat, going to take Interrogation. This is another fluff pick. It's a 3-action activity. You can use it a frequency of 3 times a day. Effectively, it just lets you suss out if a creature is lying. You focus your attention on a single creature within 30 feet. That creature attempts a will save against your perception DC, which is quite high at this point. On a failure, the creature finds itself unable to speak any deliberate or intentional lies and takes a -2 penalty to deception checks. On a critical failure, the penalty to deception checks is -4. This effect lasts for 10 minutes, as long as you are within 30 feet of the target, and the target is aware that you are using this ability against it. If you begin a new interrogation, the effect ends on any previous targets. After your interrogation ends, the target is temporarily immune for 24 hours. Now, this is another fluff pick. We're just using this as we found the cult leader. He's not giving us any information. He's giving us the runaround. Send in the scary guy with the intimidation kink, and he'll take care of it. For our skill feat, we are going to take Glad Hand, which requires expert in diplomacy. First impressions are your strong suit. When someone meets you in a casual or social situation, you can immediately attempt a diplomacy check to make an impression against that character. This is another fluff pick for our fleeting diplomatic skills. In the event that you're sort of at a ball or at a party or something, this would be sort of that Southern charm of like, well, how do you do sort of situation. Not going to be incredibly effective, especially with how late we're grabbing it. But moving on to level 19, we are going to grab our last skill increase. This is going to go into diplomacy, moving that up to legend, bringing us to legend in diplomacy, intimidation, and nature. For our general feat, we are going to grab fast recovery, which basically gives you twice as many hit points from resting. You recover from conditions faster. It's just all around great for our continued longevity, especially because we don't have that regeneration or rejuvenation token, the level 9 skeleton feat. At this level, we also get medium armor mastery, which improves our proficiency rank in unarmored, light armor, and medium armor to master. We also grab Incredible Senses, which increases our perception to legendary. That's just helpful all around. We're using perception for quite a few things at this point. Given our detective background, we're using it for tracking, for various other things. So perception is always going to be a great thing. Last and certainly not least, we have level 20. First, we have our ability boost. This is the first time it's going to shake up a little bit. And hallelujah, we're getting intelligence out of the negative here. We're going to do strength, constitution, dexterity, and intelligence. Main reason we're doing this shakeup is because if we did wisdom and we did charisma, they're just going to go up by half a point, which isn't going to give us any mechanical bonus, so there's no point for them. So we're doing all of the strength and intelligence just because we're going to get something out of it. With that intelligence point, we are going to finally become trained in acrobatics. You could also use this to become trained in any other skill that is on this list. But acrobatics seems like the most useful at this point. For our level 20 feat, and this is the truly insane one, Slinger's Reflexes. Your ability to react to unexpected circumstances is perpetually sharp. At the start of each enemy's turn, you gain an additional reaction that you can use for your gunslinger reactions. So at the start of each enemy's turn, I can use Pistolero's Retort if they critically fail on attacking me. At the start of each enemy's turn, I can do Hit the Dirt if I'm still standing up and haven't already hit the dirt. This is just insane. You're just basically, you're the only person acting at this point in an initiative order. It's basically just like the GM is going and then has to pan to you to see if something you're doing is going to interrupt what he's doing. It's just great. We're also grabbing the archetype feat from the martial dedication back to back. You excel at watching your allies' backs and helping them watch yours. As long as you and your ally are adjacent to each other, neither of you can become flat-footed due to flanking unless you are both flanked. This isn't tremendous at this level. It's a level 8 feat. Nice to have all the same. I could see taking any of the other feats that we have available to us, or even grabbing a new dedication at this point if we had already grabbed the detective, the second requisite feat for detective, but back-to-back seemed good here for me. Lastly, we're going to grab Legendary Negotiation, which is a 3-action activity, requires legend in diplomacy. You negotiate incredibly quickly in adverse situations. You make an impression, request an opponent cease their current activity, or engage in negotiations. Take a -5 penalty to the diplomacy check. Generally, the DC of this check is the creature's will DC, but the GM might modify it to the situation. So basically, this is if you're in combat with somebody, things aren't going well for you, things aren't going well for them, you can say, hey, let's take a moment, let's take a beat, let's figure this out. And it might even work. You might be able to stop people from attacking you further or whatever. Like that's just a great feat to have. Overall, as I said at the onset, this thing is built to a theme more than it's built to be overpowered. The character itself is relying heavily on Gunslinger in order to do the majority of its damage, and Gunslinger is going to excel at that role. Gunslinger always does consistent damage given their absurdly high proficiencies in their ranged weapons, and their chance to hit just scales so fast because of that. They are, especially this one, going to struggle with skill situations. So if you have if you're going to be the party's rogue archetype, as it were, and the one disarming traps or pickpocketing or so on, this character isn't going to excel at that, especially if there's other versatile situations that you want to excel at also. So if you're playing this character to sort of substitute out for a rogue with their myriad skill feats and skill options, you're not going to really have a good time with this. Diplomatically, this creature is going to do very well, actually. Your second highest ability score at all times is going to be Charisma. You're already boosting your charisma skills such as intimidation and deception because of their necessity within your class, within your various archetypes. So you're going to do very well in social situations, just given all of those things just ambiently. Overall, if I were to give this creature a rating, the way that I've built them out, not the way they could be, but the way they are currently built out, I would say it is probably a 7 out of 10 in combat effectiveness. It is probably a 3 out of 10 on skill effectiveness, and that's pushing it. And diplomatically speaking, I would put it somewhere around a 5 or 6 out of 10. It is not as good as, say, a bard or a champion would be in this instance, but it's going to be more than passable, certainly better than a fighter would be or something else at that sort of ilk. As stated at the onset, the build for this particular character is linked below in the format of Path Builder 2. It might ask you for for the premium account in order to edit this, as it does use the free archetype variant rule, and that is a premium feature for Path Builder 2. This is not in any way sponsored by them, so buy it at your own risk. I love the app, but to each their own. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked it. Let me know if there's anything that I got wrong. I'm sure there is something here and there that I've gotten wrong. So if there is, please let me know. Please consider subscribing. Thank you for watching.